Welcome to Manhwa Recaps, spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. Huge shout out and special thanks to the channel members. The manhwa starts by showing us a student with a bruised face as he heads back home during the rain. He makes his way up the steps and closes his umbrella. He heads into the elevator and goes to the 7th floor. As the elevator doors open, he looks ahead to see a suspicious looking man trying his best to conceal his identity. The man wonders who that is, since he's never seen him on this floor before, but decides it doesn't really matter. He opens the keypad to his house, heads inside, and calls out to his father that he's home, only to drop his bag as his heart sinks at the sight of a rope hanging from the ceiling. He has stumbled upon his father hanging in the kitchen, and the scene then jumps to some people eating food. Some time later, we are finally introduced to the man. He wakes up after dozing off and hears a man asking why the atmosphere is so off, saying that surely they all know his friend got promoted today and the drinks are on him. The mood immediately brightens, and they say as expected of Dong Namkyil, trusting him to buy today. Someone then pulls out the seat across from Hesu, saying they didn't know he was coming. This is Hesu's high school best friend, Huang Chongzu. Hesu says he only came here because of Chongzu. When they were in high school, they went to the same boxing gym together and were so close they were often called twins. After graduation, they lost contact, but he recently heard rumors that Chongzu quit being a boxer and ended up becoming a gangster. To confirm it for himself, Hesu decided to come to the class reunion, which he had never bothered to attend before. He tells Chongzu that he doesn't party with gangsters. Chongzu glares at him and then starts laughing, saying that a gangster having fun with a police officer sure isn't a good look. He adds that if Hesu needed money urgently, he wouldn't charge his friend interest, while handing him his card. Hesu knocks the card out of Chongzu's hand, saying he wouldn't take a gangster's money even if he had to starve, and tells Chongzu to leave. Chongzu stares at him, then decides it would be best to leave. He stands up and walks away, leaving Hesu pissed. Namkyil sits across from him this time, saying it's been a long time and asks if Hesu is still living at Chaeyeon's house. Hesu asks if it's any of his business. Namkyil asks if Hesu wants to live in his girlfriend's cramped house for the rest of his life, and if he's that poor. Hesu then asks how Namkyil knows he's low on money. Namkyil nervously looks away, saying that of course at their age, their houses aren't big, as who would have a fancy house just being a fresh graduate, but the one he's living in is tiny. He then says that he's heard Hesu's nickname as the detective who has a PhD in police brutality, and that rumor spread quickly. To the point even his station heard about it. Namkyil also points out that Hesu is a couple thousand overdue for his settlement, and that he's constantly living on a salary cut from excess force. So he offers to help Hesu financially if needed. Hesu tells him there's nothing dirtier than a gangster's money, especially money for bastards like him. Namkyil says that he never got into any trouble in high school, and he hasn't now either, but still it seems that Hesu has too much pride to ask for help. Surely, after 7 years of socializing, it's time for him to figure out how to do it, and end it with this is why he's still living a shitty life, and that Chaeyeon is too good for a guy like him. Hesu gets so pissed he squeezes his glass, shattering it in his hand, and then he immediately grabs onto Namkyil's collar. While his hand is soaked in blood, he tells him to be careful, as a man who's committed many sins won't be let off by a detective. Namkyil sweats nervously, realizing that Hesu knows everything. The fact that one of the successful candidates accepted into the police force was involved in sexually harassing an officer, and only the victim was disciplined. With Namkyil's father's backing, that guy, he got the best score and was promoted as well. But there's no evidence, so Hesu obviously won't bite him like a mad dog, but if he pushes him too far, it will only end up biting him in the ass. Hesu lets go of him, saying that he's done drinking, and then pats Namkyil's shoulder in a very condescending tone and leaves, making Namkyil completely pissed. Later that night after the bar, we see Hesu sitting by his car, smoking. He says that he also has regrets, and 12 years ago after his dad's murder was framed as a suicide, he became a police officer with the grand motive of catching the culprit, but right now he's nothing but a detective struggling with debts. A man then asks if he was the one who called for an Uber. Hesu says yes, and that he arrived quickly. As they start going down the street, the guy then asks if this is his wife. He has a picture of Chaeyeon on his dashboard. Hesu tells him that it's actually his girlfriend, and the guy says that she's pretty and has a very slender waist, and it's a shame for the girl that her boyfriend looks so disabled. Hesu looks pissed, asking what he just said, and the guy awkwardly laughs, saying he didn't say anything. The driver then says that Hesu's girlfriend must be great in bed, and she looks like she's good at moving her hips. Hesu tells the guy to stop the damn car. The guy asks what he means, and Hesu kicks the back of his seat, saying he told him to stop the damn car. The guy says okay, and that Hesu should use his words instead of violence. The car comes to a stop, and immediately Hesu goes to the driver's side, telling the guy to get the hell out. The guy says yes, exits the car, and sighs, saying it's raining, asking why Hesu told him to get out. Hesu gets pissed, saying while he's still being nice, he needs to apologize, and they can go their separate ways. The guy immediately pulls out a knife, saying he's going to die anyways. Hesu dodges the first attack, after noticing him pull it out. He wonders why the guy has such a big knife on him in the first place, but says that whoever he is, he has to deal with him first. Hesu rears back his fist, hitting the guy with a mean upper, and the guy's face looks warped. Blood begins to fly through the air, and the guy starts to stumble backward as Hesu walks forward, telling him to come here, as it's not over yet. But then Hesu hears a loud thud and looks down to see that the back of the guy's head is all bloodied. Hesu realizes this is bad, and gets closer, wondering why the guy had to fall here of all places. He looks at the back of the guy's head, seeing a giant wound, and wonders if he just killed a man. He reaches into his pocket shakily, and starts to dial the police, but then someone else calls his phone, and he wonders who would call him at this hour. The man on the phone says this is the Pal Pal chauffeur service, saying he's a little late but doesn't see Hesu, even though he's been waiting, asking where he is. Hesu's heart starts to sink, because if this is the chauffeur calling him, he looks down at the man he just accidentally murdered, and wonders who the hell this guy is. Hesu says there's no way a chauffeur would carry a knife, and lately there have been many crimes where people pose as chauffeurs to rob drunk individuals of their valuables. He wonders if he was unlucky enough to get caught in their trap. He looks down at his phone, thinking about it, and then looks around, saying there are no witnesses or cameras, and since it's raining so much, he doesn't need to worry about blood stains. He wonders if he should hide the body, report this, or maybe just leave altogether. But then he thinks about his job as a police officer and about his father's murderer, because if he loses his job, he'll lose the chance to find him. A truck then drives past him, and he wonders if they saw it, but calms himself down, saying with no streetlights and such heavy rain, there's no way they would have seen it going so fast. But he wonders how to take care of this. He looks around, saying he could bury him or throw him in the sea. But without a shovel, it would take a long time to do the first option, and just in case, he needs to make a proper alibi. He starts to feel very anxious and tells himself to stop, saying even if this guy was a criminal who tried to kill him, it's obvious that he punched him, which ultimately led to his death. If he turns himself in, they'll strip him of his position, and even though he would only have to spend a few years in prison, that would still cost him his job. But if he ends up hiding the murder, he wonders if he would even be qualified to pursue his father's killer. He then sighs, and we hear on the phone that the police have answered, and he says that a person is injured, giving them the location. He then squats down and waits for a second, then we see him on the phone again with a woman asking what. He tells her they should break up. She asks why he wants to, asking if maybe her oppa told him. He asks what she's talking about. She says that she's very sure he talked to him tonight. And he asks if she's talking about Namkyil, which is his classmate from the bar. She asks if he's trying to say that he doesn't know him, but Hesu understands the situation now and sighs, saying he was hoping this wouldn't happen. She said she hated the police, but she was having an affair with another cop. She starts to twirl her hair, saying that Namkyil is different from him. He doesn't obsess over police work like Hesu does, and he earns way more money. Hesu seems more relieved now, telling her that they should just break up. He then starts to light a cigarette but immediately hears groaning and turns, surprised to see that the guy is still breathing. He says the guy must have suffered a concussion, and he wonders why he didn't think about this in the first place. He starts to use his jacket as a tourniquet on the guy's head, laying him down properly, and begs for the guy not to die. The first responders arrive on the scene, telling him to move away. We see them doing chest compressions on the man in the street. It jumps to the surgeon saying the patient's life isn't in danger, but his brain has definitely suffered damage, and they need to watch how he progresses. We see Hesu sighing, and one of his co-workers says that they should go now. Hesu says that a single mistake can have dire consequences. We then see him in court, where they are sentencing him to 3 years in prison for assault resulting in death, because it turns out the guy died. That verdict led to his dismissal as a police officer. As we see him being taken through the prison, he says nothing but death awaited him where he was put next. As he's walking towards his cell, some people start to catcall him, saying that they recognize him as Detective Shin. Several of them say they also recognize him, mentioning that he punched out some of their teeth. Another one says that when he was fat, Hesu broke his arm so badly he went numb, though it's better now. Some other guy says Hesu broke his nose, and he still can't smell anything. The corrections officer tells him to head inside, and as soon as he does, all of the people in the room start to look at him. Sometime later in the day, when it's time for them to be in the yard, we hear a man saying he never thought he'd see the detective here, asking if he remembers him while laughing. One of them starts to approach him with a wooden stick, asking if the food suits his taste. Hesu doesn't say a word but turns and glares at them all. They immediately freeze up, commenting on how his eyes are scary. Another guy has a piece of glass. He and his bald friend ask Hesu if he thinks he's a big shot in here, saying he'll get screwed in here if he punches somebody. The guy who complained about his nose earlier yells that they need to kill him, and they all immediately charge at Hesu. Baldy swings his piece of wood, hitting Hesu straight in the head, but Hesu tanks it like an absolute Chad. Blood starts to pour down Hesu's head. The nose guy grits his teeth and calls Hesu a bastard. Blood starts flying as Hesu is repeatedly shanked, and he wonders how it came to this. They kick his legs out from under him and start kicking the absolute hell out of him, and he wonders if this is how his life is going to end. Baldy then raises the remaining pieces of his weapon and slams it down, but Hesu raises his hand, causing it to shatter, causing the weapon to lodge into his hand, and blood begins to pour out. Hesu says that honestly, at this point, he doesn't care what happens. His life is not over yet. He struggles to stand, but another man hits him in the side of the head with a piece of wood, asking him where the hell he's looking. Everything starts to go black for Hesu, and he starts to mumble to himself, saying it's not over yet. As he starts to feel rain pouring down on his body, he's confused. He looks down at the chauffeur holding the knife and says this is definitely the same day. He doesn't know what happened. As he dodges the swing, he returns with an uppercut, saying this is definitely the same day that his life was completely ruined. It looks like he's about to suffer the same fate again, but Hesu tells himself no. He then opens his hand, and instead of hitting the chauffeur with a closed fist, he just slaps him, knocking the chauffeur backward to the floor. Hesu then immediately runs to the guy as he starts getting back up, grabbing his arm and twisting it, causing the man to scream in pain. Hesu says it's self-defense because he pulled the knife first, asking if he understands what that means. The chauffeur asks what he's talking about, and Hesu says that means he can use excessive force on him. As Hesu snaps the man's arm like a pretzel, he starts to call his station, saying he would like to report a special assault case and tells them the location. The chauffeur can't believe he just messed with a cop, and Hesu starts to handcuff him. The chauffeur asks if he can at least uncuff him, saying he'll make sure Hesu won't regret it. But he is too lost in thought, as he is wondering what's going on, saying it's all too clear for this to only be a dream, even though he was just in prison. Then the actual chauffeur calls him again, saying that he was late, but he doesn't see him at the location, asking where he is. Hesu hangs up as a truck begins to pull up, driving by. Hesu sits there completely dazed, wondering what the hell is happening, saying maybe God has given him a chance out of pity. He starts to call Cheyenne again, and she asks what's up. He says they should break up. She repeats, asking why now, wondering if her Oppa told him. He says yes, and it was nice while it lasted, and he'll move out tomorrow. He then hangs up as the police car arrives. The case was passed on to the detectives in the jurisdiction, and he was freed as it was deemed self-defense. As we see piles of evidence belonging to the driver, the detective found it very suspicious and decided to search his home. When they opened one of the filing cabinets, they found the belongings of all of his victims that he murdered. He had a little diary called Hunting as well, which included a very detailed description of how he would approach his victims and the weapons he would use. His original plan was to kill Hesu after stopping his car, then follow the GPS to his house and kill Cheyenne immediately afterward. Unfortunately, Hesu doesn't stand for that. He bodied the guy, and the man was arrested without even swinging his knife. So the serial killer whose case went cold was finally captured. Things developed well following that. They cancelled the 3-month pay cut for the excessive force he received beforehand, and he was also given a reward that's on par with a promotion. We then see them at their cubicles as one of his co-workers says it's a shame it's not a real promotion, as no other officer puts down criminals like Officer Shin. Another guy says that's the problem though, he doesn't just put them down, he literally puts them down, and he would have been the chief by now if he didn't do that. They start to joke around and banter while Hesu's co-worker hands him coffee, asking if he's not disappointed. Hesu accepts it, saying he's glad it wasn't deemed excessive force this time. His co-workers say that he seems to have changed, and they guess not anybody could just take down a serial killer, and they start clapping. Hesu says he can't believe he'd see a day like this, asking if it really is another chance that he's been given. As he's looking at some of his money, he says that he'll do his best. That Saturday, we see him looking at the TV as it starts to announce the winners of the lottery, and he's holding a lottery ticket, begging that it'll help him take care of his debt. He then throws it away out of anger, saying that now he's memorized the numbers, and he wishes it will happen once more. He puts his hands together and begins to pray to whoever, saying he wants to go back to the past. A woman then asks if somebody died and why he's praying all of a sudden. He snaps out of it and realizes nothing happened. The next day back at work, one of Hesu's co-workers tells him that the chief wants to see him. Hesu is surprised, wondering what it is, and even the others are saying that maybe it's a promotion. Hesu stands up and heads into the office, asking the chief if he's looking for him. The chief says yes, asking how long there is until April. Hesu says 2 days, and the chief says that in 2 days, Hesu is going to go to Gangjin and join the Eastern Police Force. Hesu is surprised by this, asking why, and the chief says that it's an order from above, and he should have been good in a normal way. And so what if he caught a serial killer? With his nickname of PhD in police brutality, surely he should have some shame. Hesu wonders why the higher-ups are doing this to him, saying he has never once been embarrassed by his actions and that the law is weak, so he enacts it by using force. Ironically, this rat-like bastard took enough dirty money to fill a whole truck, and it's just a hunch, but Hesu is disappointed that he never got to gather the evidence on his chief. He starts to bite his lip out of anger, asking why they want him to leave after he's worked so hard for 5 years here and go to a police station so far away. He says that this is practically a demotion. The chief notices his hands shaking and gets scared, telling him to leave and go do his job. Hesu holds back his anger and says, "Yes, sir," but in reality, he is livid. He says that if he goes all the way to Gangjin, he's going to have to pay so much more in rent, and it will also become harder to find the man who killed his father. We see a taxi taking him to the police station a couple of days later, and he gets out of the car, looking around, saying it's pretty big for a police station, and there must be a lot of cases. As soon as he heads inside, he sees an officer trying to calm a man down who's yelling, saying that yes, he hit him first, but the guy was talking shit about his mom. Hesu says this is just a mess, and it's not even past dinner time. We see a woman running out of the bathroom, holding onto a garbage can, telling somebody to throw up in the bag rather than the chair. He realizes now why they told him to come early, to see how bad of a state it's in. The woman then asks Hesu what brings him here, and he introduces himself as Officer Shin, saying he'll be working with them from today on. We then hear somebody vomiting as we see him doing it all over Hesu's shoes, and the woman runs away, saying to just give her a minute. Hesu looks down at his shoe, disgusted, and he explains to us about Gangjin City. It is number 1 in reported cases, number 1 in criminal cases, and number 1 in injured police officers on duty. The information isn't made public because it is completely shameful, but it is also the only place that has achieved this triple crown nationwide. It is often called the Korean Gotham City. As we see him helping a drunk dude in a chair, he says he was assigned to this police station as punishment clearly. A woman then comes over the radio, as dispatch and introduces herself as Baek Hana, saying that there is a drunk going crazy at Jejong-Faba intersection. A guy at the cubicle says it seems they've gotten a report and tells the girl from earlier, whom we learn is named Lim Sun-young, that she should take this. Then he calls out to Hesu, saying that he doesn't know his name, and Hesu introduces himself. The guy says that he should go with her. We see them getting into their police car, and Sun-young starts to check in with the radio, saying that they're 7 minutes away from the scene. Then the person on the other end, dispatch, tells her that the woman's head is bleeding. Hesu wonders why her radio looks so weird. Sun-young says that she's only recently started taking cases directly with a patrol car, and she's heard that Gangjin Police Station will be the first to implement their new radios too. He says, alright, now understanding why he's never seen this stuff before. She says it's time for them to head out, and immediately she floors it, swerving literally everywhere on the road. Hesu starts to death grip the handle in the car, asking why the hell she drives like this, asking if this is how she normally does it, and she laughs, saying that must have surprised him and that she's sorry. They then get to where the officer is waiting. It's full of pedestrians, and she gets out of her car, calling everybody crazy. We see a guy with his foot on a waiter, asking why they don't challenge them again. Sun-young opens the door, asking them what they think they're doing, and the thugs tell her to just stop yapping and come over and pour them drinks. She starts to laugh at them, and then when she walks forward, she's surprised to see somebody on the floor, bloodied, and she starts to get pissed, But Hesu puts his hand on her shoulder, telling her to please call the ambulance first, and she says that she understands. Hesu is pissed. The thugs start to wonder why he's coming over to them, and one of them has the bright idea of grabbing a bottle of soju and breaking it, pointing it at Hesu, telling him to get lost if he doesn't want to die. Hesu immediately grabs onto his arm and slams his face straight into a table. His friend then stands up and goes in to swing at Hesu, but Hesu dodges it and reaches in, grabbing the guy by his shirt, lowering his head. Then he grabs onto the back of it, slamming him straight into the table. He says they're under arrest for charges of aggravated assault, assault on a police officer, sexual harassment, and obstruction of justice. He starts to read them their Miranda rights, but the Korean version. Sun Gyeong is completely surprised by this, and we hear dispatch asking how they can help her. She tells them where they are, saying to send an ambulance. The ambulance arrives, and the injured person gets put into it while the two thugs get put into the back of the car. Sun Gyeong says fortunately the old lady's life isn't in danger, and the same with the part-timer. He's bruised, but he doesn't have any big injuries, and Hesu says that's a relief. She says she thinks they handled it easier than she expected and that they should head back to the station. They get another radio message from dispatch, saying they received a missing persons report, asking if there are any patrol cars nearby the area. Sun Gyeong laughs, saying that their station never seems to have an end, and calls in, saying that they are in the area. Dispatch says that the person went out with her friend to drink, but when they went to the bathroom, their friend disappeared. The friend was completely drunk, and she was just sitting there, but she doesn't know where she went, saying that they should go check it out. Hesu thinks about the missing person case, and then we see them walking down the street as a woman looks around anxiously, saying that her friend promised to call her as soon as she got home. Sun Gyeong starts asking her questions, asking if she had any contact with other people while drinking, and the woman says no, she was completely drunk, and there's no way she could have gone anywhere else. Hesu looks up at the CCTV camera, saying they should check it first. They head inside as the shop owner shows them, and her friend points out exactly when her friend is getting dragged away. Sun Gyeong suggests that it could be a boyfriend or acquaintance, but the woman says she doesn't have a boyfriend, and this is weird. Now Hesu and Sun Gyeong realize what's going on, and Sun Gyeong immediately radios in, saying that the missing person case in Yongsu needs to be changed to a kidnapping case, and the suspect is wearing a black hoodie and jeans. Another unit, 201, radios in, saying they still have to be nearby, and they need to search all the motels, karaoke rooms, and even the coin karaoke rooms, and that they're moving to Songwon, telling Unit 4 to follow them. 201 is the violent crimes team at the police station. Since rape cases are classified as Code 0, even the violent crimes team is assigned to them. We see one of them showing them his ID, saying they're from the station and they'll be investigating from now on, assisting both Hesu and Sun Gyeong, and they should go search through the karaoke rooms, except for the motels. As she and Hesu walk back to the car, she wonders why he said except the motels, and Hesu says that another unit must be searching through them at the moment, and for missing person cases like this, the principle is to search the most likely places first, both in terms of financial and manpower resources. She says she understands, and they make their way over to a karaoke bar. It looks completely dark, and she wonders if it's even open, and Hesu says they can figure out once they head inside. They immediately do so, as Hesu says time is of the essence in cases like this. They start kicking in door after door, surprising the customers, and Sun Gyeong apologizes, but Hesu moves to the next room, saying he's sure they must be somewhere close. Down the hallway, one of the doors opens, and we see a guy peering out of it as he walks away, and he's wearing a black hoodie and jeans. As he walks by Hesu, Hesu notices him and calls out to the man, and immediately he starts running in the opposite direction. Hesu tells Sun Gyeong to report it on the radio, and she says they found the suspect at the Should I Sing or Not karaoke, and he's trying to escape on foot. As Hesu runs past the open door, he stops because he notices something. There's blood all on the floor, and he tells Sun Gyeong to immediately call an ambulance as well. Hesu then immediately starts applying pressure to the victim's wound, and Sun Gyeong barely stops herself from throwing up because she can see the injuries on the throat. She then immediately pulls out her baton and starts to walk after where the suspect went, but Hesu yells, telling her not to go, as the police are already upstairs, so the person will be caught anyway. They just need to radio in, and she just needs to report the route the suspect took. She says she understands and reports that the suspect might have fled south from the karaoke room. Hesu says the reason he stopped her is because chasing an armed killer alone is a task that even the most seasoned detectives would hesitate to take on, as they could just be another victim added to the case. But he's frustrated, saying if only they had arrived a minute earlier, or even 30 seconds earlier, they definitely could have saved this woman. If he had started the investigation from the outside from the beginning, and he didn't get into a scuffle with some drunkards on the way in, or if he didn't stop to scold the karaoke owner. As the woman's body remains limp, he sits there no longer applying pressure. He looks defeated. His vision starts to go black, and when he looks around, he wonders what's going on because he's immediately back in the car with Sun Gyong, and he's gone to before it all happened. If he goes to the scene right now, there will be enough time to fix things. He points, telling her that she should go over here. She asks why, and he tries to figure out how to say it because if he just says it's a feeling, it will seem random. He says that assuming the suspect doesn't have a car, they probably went somewhere not far from the crime scene that is not easily visible. There is a karaoke room down this alley. She says that makes sense and wonders if this is related to criminal psychology or something like that since he is a detective. He says yes, and if they want to catch a criminal, they have to understand their behavior. He tells her it's time to go, and he hops out of the car, asking if she has any live rounds. She says no, and that she only has a taser, and he tells her to take it out. She says okay, and he starts to roll up his sleeves while heading down the steps. He tells the karaoke owner that they are searching for a kidnapper, and his cooperation is appreciated, and to please lock the door and wait outside right now. The owner is surprised and says okay, and then Hesu tells Sun Gyong to wait by the back door and hold the taser. She says yes, and then he exhales while saying that the past is repeating itself. He is definitely here. As he goes to reach the handle, he hears a man inside yelling, telling someone to stay still. Immediately, Hesu opens the door, which surprises the man, and it is before the woman has been stabbed. The guy sees it's a police officer and pulls out his weapon and starts running at Hesu. But Hesu starts running straight towards him as well and leaps through the air, kicking the guy straight in the face. As the guy gets sent flying across the room, Hesu takes the chance to quickly apprehend his weapon, again breaking his arm, and then tells him that he is under arrest for attempted kidnapping, assault, and rape, and if he exercises his right to remain silent, Hesu will make him talk. Sun Gyong then comes into the room, and he tells her to inform the others on the radio and call for an ambulance, and she says okay. And radios that Unit 4 has apprehended the kidnapper at the karaoke room. Back to the other unit when they are putting the guy in the car. They are asking the suspect why he is walking weird, and the other one says it looks like his arm is broken. Another guy from Unit 201 says that this bastard deserved a beating, and he was just released from prison 2 days ago. The charges were rape and murder, and he guesses the 10 years he served for being mentally ill wasn't enough, and he should rot in prison for the rest of his life. They say that this guy is pure evil, and it seems like he brought a sharp tool trying to kill someone. It's a relief they caught him before anything worse happened. Then everybody starts commending Hesu, saying that he saved a life. The leader for 201 sticks his hand forward, thanking Hesu for his hard work, and Hesu shakes his hand too, why the civilians geeking. Back in the patrol car, they start leaving, and Sun Gyong asks how he figured all that out at once. Hesu sits there for a second, saying that he has no idea how to reply to this. If he tells her that he saw it happen in the future, she'll think he's insane, so he tells her that he's just lucky. Later that night, he makes his way to where he's currently staying, as we see him washing his face in the sink, and he says it's still so clear, and he can feel the sensation of applying pressure to the victim's throat. This is definitely not a dream as he's looking at himself in the mirror, and he says it's not happened just once but twice. He wonders how it's possible for something like this to happen. All he said was if only he had come a bit earlier. He wonders if it's a mix of it being an assault, murder, or desperation. Or maybe it was the location. He can't really rely on desperation, and he wonders if there's a trigger behind it. He grabs his towel, saying the times seem to be different too. At first, he went back a few months, and now he went back to about an hour before the incident. There must be some kind of rules that he needs to quickly figure out. The next day at the station, the door begins to open as we see the woman from last night entering the police station looking healthy. One of the guys asks if he can help her, and she asks if Officer Shin is here. He tells her to hold on a moment, and Hesu walks over, introducing himself, and then she bows, thanking him for yesterday. He's surprised that she'd come this far for that, and he tells her he just did his job. She says, yeah, then starts fidgeting nervously as if she has more to say, and he asks what else she needs to tell him. She hesitates, and then one of the guys in the back says it's alright and he can go outside and chat for a bit. Hesu says okay and tells the woman they should head outside. She opens her bag, saying she didn't bring much, but there were more police officers than she expected, so she couldn't give them inside. Since expensive things get caught up in legal issues, he looks at all of it, saying she didn't have to do this for him, and she just tells him to accept it and thanks him again for yesterday. He then mentions alcohol, saying she should never drink too much to the point she loses her balance. She says she usually doesn't drink like this, but she messed up on her exam, so she was stressed out, and he just tells her to be careful next time. She still finds this all strange. He asks her what she means, and she says that she thought she died. She was stabbed in the throat, but when she woke up, there were no scars, and they said it never happened, even though it felt so real. She remembers all of this, asking if memories from that time will remain with the victims. She says that she's sorry if she said something weird out of nowhere and then thanks him again for saving her. He says it's fine as it's his job after all, and they sit there awkwardly for a moment. He then tells her that he's working at the moment, so they should leave it here. As he's going back inside, he bows to her. She cheers him on, and he replies, cheering her on as well. She nods and then immediately gets a PTSD attack of the ugly bastard who tried to kill her but shrugs it off and walks away. He says that the memories of the previous events overlap. It'll be hard to overcome in just one day. Sometime later, in the patrol car, Unit 101 reports that there is a student issue. That usually means issues like delinquents, smoking, drinking, and other student-related activities. Sun Gyeong immediately whips the car around, saying they're on their way, and when they arrive, they see a bunch of students hanging out with some alcohol, even shit-talking some other kid. One of the girls is telling a story while the others are listening. Sun Gyeong says it seems like they're having a drinking party. One of the students notices them, and Haesu asks where they bought the alcohol and cigarettes. Then one of the women asks him if he has a girlfriend, and another girl immediately rats her out, saying that she bought everything for them as her family runs a convenience store. The girl tells her to shut up and calls her a bitch, then immediately switches back, smiling at Haesu, saying they're wrong for doing this, and they'll clean up and leave nicely and quietly, asking if he'll let them go just this once. They start to tell him it was only because they were so stressed from studying. Sun Gyeong tells Haesu it doesn't seem like a big problem and that they should just make them clean up and leave. Haesu nods his head, but then he notices something. Immediately, he gets down, looking at one of the girl's legs, and she asks what he's looking at while pointing down to her skirt. He tells her to move. She barks at him, asking if he's trying to get her to open her legs, calling him a pervert. He then pushes her out of the way as she asks if he's recording this, while screaming. They see a student beaten up underneath, and Haesu tells her to come out. The girl crawls out, and they see that she's got a cut on her face and a bunch of bruises on her legs. The other group starts laughing, saying this is so funny, it looks natural on her. Haesu asks the student if the rest did this to her, but the girl is too afraid to speak. The brown-haired girl from earlier says she's like that because she dropped some coins. Sun Gyeong says she'll pass this on to another team. Since even if they are juveniles, they need to set an example, and she'll make the call. Haesu tells her okay, but immediately the beaten-up girl yells, saying she fell down the stairs and it was all on her own, telling them to just leave. The kids start clapping, saying that she's so cool. And we learn her name is Hamyuri and they tell her she's amazing, and her story is legit. Haesu sighs, saying there's nothing they can do in this situation. No matter the circumstances, if the victim is unwilling to report something, they can't do anything. Sometime later, they're escorting Yuri back to her apartment, and he says that her house is close to the playground, and he can't believe something like this happened right in front of her house, which should be the safest place. He watches as she enters her house and calls out to her, and she turns. He hands her a card, saying if she musters the courage, she should call him immediately. Since she can't solve anything without a strong will. She looks really troubled about it, then immediately slams the door, heading inside. A few days later, it jumps to a restaurant as a dude is yelling, saying that the cashier should get something out. The cashier tries to tell him this is a snack shop and they don't sell stuff like that, but the dude pulls out his money, saying he shouldn't ignore customers because they're always right. Haesu asks the dude if he could step outside with him and tells Sun Gyeong to get the bill. The dude asks who he is. Haesu picks him up, saying just follow him outside, and the dude asks if he knows who he is. He then gets a phone call, and Haesu answers it. As the dude says he's the chief's third cousin, he starts vomiting everywhere, and Haesu tells whoever is on the other side of the phone to speak up. The cashier asks why he's letting him just yak on the floor, and Haesu tells the drunk dude to come outside first, helping him out. As the guy is holding onto his stomach, Haesu looks down at his phone, wondering if it was a spam call, so he calls them back, but the person on the other end doesn't answer, and he gets sent straight to voicemail. Sun Gyeong asks if something is wrong, and Haesu says no, and that they should just head out. As they're leaving, Sungyong says it was a really rough day, and she can't believe they had 3 cases in a row. Hesu says that she's right and that she should rest as soon as she gets home. Then over dispatch, Unit 101 tells them that at an apartment complex in Yongsu, there is a suicide report. Hesu and Sungyong both look at each other realizing they just came from there, and then it cuts to some people asking what happened. Hesu starts trying to call whoever called him as he makes his way through the crowds. He forces his way through because they don't listen, and then he's surprised by something. What he sees is a familiar hair clip, bloodied and broken on the ground. Because none other than Yuri was the victim of the suicide, and she was the one who called him. He drops his phone, saying the current time is 21:37, and the report came in at 21:03, and he received the call at 20:38. He grips his fist tightly, saying it has not even been an hour yet, and he begs that he can go back again to try and save her. If you've watched till the end, comment, exile, to let me know. Subscribe for more videos like this, leave a like or a comment to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.